You need to get a young pass rusher in there. Chop Robinson has the best first step of anybody in this draft in terms of rushing the passer.
No one played with a higher motor last season.
This will definitely help the pass rush.
Following that breaking news in the NFL where the Dolphins are signing Odell Beckham Jr. to a one-year deal.
He is going to be on the number 3 corner in this offense, in McDaniel's offense. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities to make some plays. I think he is going to help this Dolphins offense tremendously.
You know, you guys, I'm just going to go ahead and jump straight into the Miami Dolphins at this point because this team, man, so far this offseason not only has had a great free agency period, but they've also had a pretty good draft, in my opinion, that a lot of people are overlooking. This has made them get not only better on offense, where they were already really dominant, but it also made them even better on the defensive side of the ball, which makes this team a lot better as a complete unit. And I'm just going to tell you right now, if this team plays to the ability that I think they can next season, I would be worried if I was any other franchise because they are going to be one scary team. But before we get into why I believe that, if you like Miami Dolphins content just like this, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any Dolphins videos for the remainder of this offseason. Okay, so to get back on topic with the Miami Dolphins, this team, of course, is coming off a season where they did make the playoffs, but they ended up falling short to the Kansas City Chiefs in the first round, which was obviously a bit disappointing. I myself thought the Dolphins were going to go a lot farther than that with the way they were able to play throughout the season, but of course, we saw them have a small little decline towards the end of it, which ultimately led to them losing in the playoffs, but I think that was mainly due to all of the injuries that this team had. Now, I will say, even with the injuries, I think they played a little bit below the level they should have, but the injuries are a good excuse because if they even had a few of the guys that they lost to injury, they would have been a lot better team. But even with those injuries last year, they needed to come into this offseason and find a way to get better, and I think that's exactly what they've done. We've got to start with this offense, man, because with what they've just added to this team, I honestly don't see how this is even possible. Just recently, the Miami Dolphins went out and they signed Odell Beckham Jr. to add to what they already had in their weapon group, which as we all know was already pretty hard to stop. Odell Beckham, of course, is a bit older at 31 years old, but for the most part, last season on the Ravens, he helped them be the team they were, and we still saw him put up those crazy flash plays that we're used to seeing from him. I know he's had a few injuries in his past, but we saw him play for the majority of the season last year, so I expect him to be able to do the same thing in the upcoming year with the Dolphins. He's not only a great player that's going to come in and be a great receiver 3 for this team, but he also is a veteran that's won a Super Bowl before, and he's also gone very far in the playoffs multiple times, which is extremely good for a team that really hasn't got over that hump yet to have. He's going to bring in that mindset, and I also think he's going to be able to play the majority of the season. And when you look at this team's receiver room with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and then Odell Beckham, it starts to look extremely scary because who are you going to guard as a defense? I mean, sure, you can double team Tyreek Hill, but then you leave Jalen Waddle and Odell Beckham one-on-one. Probably not the best idea because both of those guys are going to be able to get separation, which should make Tua's life even easier than it already was. Now, I would like to mention they also added Jonnu Smith this offseason to give him another weapon to work with at the tight end position, and I really do like that signing quite a bit as well because I think he's pretty solid in the receiving game while also being a pretty good blocker, so it really makes him a well-rounded tight end that Mike McDaniel is going to be able to use in pretty creative ways. And that's not even mentioning the fact that in the draft, you also added some receivers to this receiver room in Malik Washington in the 6th round and Taj Washington in the 7th round. And when I take that into consideration and I look at this Miami Dolphins weapon group overall as a complete unit, they honestly are one of the best weapon groups, if not the very best weapon group in the entire NFL, and I know Mike McDaniel is going to have an absolute field day with that. But as we all know, you can't just have a good passing attack if you want to win football games. You also got to have a good offensive line and a good run game to pair with that, and that's exactly what I think the Dolphins are going to have as well. You of course still have the veteran Raheem Mostert as your lead back, which I like a lot. You're still going to have Devon Achane, who absolutely broke out last year with his speed, and then in the 4th round of this draft, you got another steal in my opinion by taking Jalen Wright, the running back out of Tennessee. Jalen Wright is another absolute speed demon running a 4.38 at the combine, and we're going to see Mike McDaniel use him in the exact same way that he uses Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, which just allows this Miami Dolphins running back room to take breaks, to keep fresh legs constantly on the field. This is going to allow the rushing attack to be even a step up from where it was last year, and that was already a good rushing attack, so I can imagine what this run game is going to be in 2023. 2024. And then finally, for the cherry on top, they didn't just add skilled players to this team, they also went out and drafted Patrick Paul out of Houston in the second round, which is a pretty good tackle prospect with all things considered. They needed to add to this offensive line, and this pick did exactly that. So I'm hopeful to see what he can bring to the table in year one to help protect Tua, because we know that's been an issue in the past. But as we all know, there's a lot more that goes into winning football games besides the offense, and that's why the Dolphins also had to go out and make some moves on the defensive side of the ball, and from what they've done so far, I really like it. They, of course, lost Christian Wilkins this offseason, which is a big blow due to how good of a player he is, but he also was going to cost a lot of money, and they really just didn't feel comfortable paying that. So instead, they're still going to have Zach Sealer on the interior, and they brought in a ton of different guys like Jonathan Hankins, Tier Tart, etc. to try to fill that void, and hopefully they'll be able to fill it at least a competent level. And if they do that, this defensive line is going to be extremely good because they already added Shaquille Barrett, they already have Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, and then in the draft, in the first round, they also went out and took Chop Robinson, an absolute freak out of Penn State. Now, he is a bit raw as a prospect. He's going to need some fine-tuning, but if he can just have a little bit of development and get polished up a little bit, he has the potential to be one of the best edge rushers in this entire class. And on tape, you see his crazy first step, play in and play out, and I think we're going to see the Dolphins use that to their advantage. He also does a really good job of transferring speed to power, and you see him push offensive tackles way back into the backfield because of that. He's just going to need to add some more moves around that to make it more dynamic. And with him added, this defensive line really does look like it has the potential to be one of the best defensive lines in the league, which is obviously something that's extremely important to playing good defense. Now, behind them, to add on to the front seven, they also added Jordan Brooks, who's a linebacker who I like a ton, and outside of that one ACL injury, he's been able to stay pretty healthy, and if he stays healthy on this team, he is going to be a huge addition, and he's going to make this defense a ton better. And with him just being 26 years old, I think it was one of the better additions of this entire offseason. Now, moving back from the front seven to the secondary, you of course lost Xavier Howard, who honestly was getting a little bit washed, and he was extremely expensive, so I don't hate that decision too much. But to replace him, you went out and signed Kendall Fuller, who I think is a better player, and he's going to be a great guy to pair with Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey played elite football when he came back from his injury last year, so to have another elite corner to pair with him is exactly what this team needed. And then as your third option, you're still going to have Kader Kohu, who played pretty good with all things considered, in my opinion. So the corner room looks extremely good right now. And then when you move back to the safety room, I absolutely love the duo they have there as well, with Javon Holland, who played like a top 3 safety last year, and then the addition of Jordan Poyer, who obviously has proved himself to be a really good safety as well, even though he might be getting a little bit older. That duo over the top of everything is going to be absolutely insane, and when you pair that with the corner room and the front seven that the Dolphins have, this defense has a chance to be one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. And considering you're going to be pairing that with an offense as talented as the Dolphins, this team, like I said at the beginning of the video, is going to be a true contender, and if I was a different NFL franchise, I would be extremely worried about having to play against them.